Intel unveils new Laminar RH2 RM2 CPU coolers. World's fastest gaming laptops with AMD Ryzen 9 9950HX 3D and RTX 5090 are here. Cooler Master unveils innovative GeForce RTX 50 coolers exclusive to pre-builds. AMD Radeon RX 9070 to have balance of power and similar pricing. Radeon RX 9070 XT announcement expected on January 22nd. And lastly, more AMD Radeon RX 9070 X3 3D Mark benchmark has been leaked. Okay, so firstly we have from Intel, and they're launching two Laminar coolers. These two coolers we're talking about. First one is the Intel Laminar RM2 cooler. And this particular cooler, as you can see, is pretty much smaller and only for Ultra 7 and Ultra 5 processors, mainly for these processors, the Intel processor Ultra Dexter processor Series 2, which includes the 225, 225F, 235, 265, and 265F. And weirdly enough, it says Core Ultra 7, but they don't mention the processors, which Core Ultra 7 processors, but they do mention about the Core Ultra 5 processors, I guess. And the second one, which is the Intel Laminar RH2 cooler, that is specified for Core Ultra 9 processor 285, only the 285, not others. So interesting here. So yeah, when you look into this particular one, it's a pretty standard looking like the existing one with an RGB effect, or I guess it's not really RGB, it's just a blue color. They don't really mention any RGB effect or even any color anyway, but it seems like it's gonna glow, because the second one you can see right over here, it's an ARGB lighting. Exactly, controllable ARGB lighting. That is quite interesting. And they're also giving a 3 years limited warranty on the cooler, so that's quite interesting there. Momo_US has more in-depth pictures. As you can see, it's yeah, it looks pretty interesting, not gonna lie. It looks beefier than the usual Intel cooler, so that is pretty good. And it's also for a Core Ultra 9 285, so it's kind of expected because it's gonna be a little bit beefier than usual. And the rest of the two, it looks like pretty generic. I don't really recommend even using this particular one because I guess it's pretty small, but I guess it's gonna do the job well. Even for 285, I don't think this is gonna be enough for, you know, higher workload, but I guess it's gonna be better than the previous one, which is this. So yeah, we'll see about that. Next up, we have an interesting information from Hongyan Fu, and basically it says that the world's most powerful gaming laptop is here, which is featuring Ryzen 9 9955HX 3D plus the RTX 5090 175 watts. And it is called Machinike Sugon 16 Pro. I don't know if I butchered that name, but I guess it is what it is. But let's look into the specs a little bit when I zoom into it. So yeah, of course, the AMD Ryzen 9 9950HX 3D with 32 gigs of DDR5 memory with 1 terabyte of PCIe 5.0. And the panel is 300 Hz of 2560 x 1600 custom resolution there. And a laptop GPU, we're looking at RTX 5090 with 175 watts. So 175 plus 125 is going to be 280 watts. So quite a lot, or over 280 watts exactly speaking. Of course, the RGB is there, no doubt about that. And we also have the 2.5 gigs Ethernet, so that's pretty neat. And of course, it also has the charging capability of 140 watts Type-C connector, so that's also nice. So definitely it's gonna be the most fastest gaming laptop because of course the X3D processor and an RTX 5090. This is gonna be massive, definitely. Next up, we have information from overclock3d.net, and we have the Cooler Master with their custom RTX 50 series of GPUs, and this particular GPU is pretty big. Because just look at this size of the RTX 5090 there. It was unveiled on CES 2025, and man oh man, it is probably the biggest GPU I've ever seen. And RTX 5090 doesn't really require that much cooling anyway because it's quite efficient, 575 watts, so I guess that's enough. But this is overkill in my opinion. But I guess it's heavily overclocked, so that makes sense. So you can already see the height and the width. It's just crazy how much thick this GPU is. And look at the slot. It's probably like, I can't really tell what is the slot of this GPU because it doesn't really show it, but it's probably like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 slots. I don't know, like if you can even fit this on any casing. Well, that's exactly, you cannot, because it's only for pre-built Cooler Master PCs. Kind of bummer, but also it's kind of doesn't make sense to have a thick PC or thick GPU like this. It don't really make sense at all. But the cooling system is pretty beefy. You can see the fins. So yeah, it's gonna be very much efficient in terms of cooling, but it makes sense why it's gonna be very much cool because the cooling is just so damn big. And next up, we have an interview from Michael Quesada, and basically he interviewed Frank Azor, of course, about AMD Radeon 4, of course, and there's some information. Obviously, this is in Spanish, so we have video cards translating for us, so thank you to video cards here, and we have some information to look into. So this is particularly very interesting. Azor disclosed that AMD will hold a separate event to cover Radeon 4 and AMD FSR 4. So according to Frank Azor, he says, what are we announcing here with the announcement of Radeon 2 and Radeon 3? We had dedicated events to present the architecture and performance improvements. We can't cover that in 5 minutes. If we had, everyone would be angry with us for not giving the new graphics cards the attention they deserve. That's why we decided to reserve the announcement of the new graphics cards for a separate event where we can give them proper focus. We will also announce software related advancements such as AMD FSR 4. Next up, he adds, we're going to bring a very competitive product. Everyone will benefit from this launch. It will be worth the wait. So it kind of makes sense. They don't want to explain Radeon 4 with AI, so they're separating the event. So CES was about AI only, and which was pretty much boring, but now we will have a separate event for Radeon 4 launch and also FSR 4, so that's going to be interesting. When we announce Radeon 4, we'll introduce a powerful graphics card, not a $300 card, which is a bummer. Hopefully they could bring a $300 card, but also not a $1,000 card. So that's quite interesting. It's going to be reaching up to $1,000, which kind of makes sense because they're going to be launching 9070 XT. That's going to be the top of the line from AMD, and obviously that's not going to be reaching $1,000, otherwise it's not going to sell. We're confident most people will see it as a good product or at a good price. Its balance of power and price will be comparable to the RX 7800 XT and 7900 GRE. So my guess would be it will be priced at the same as RX 7800 XT and will perform like RX 7900 GRE, and we'll come to that lately. And there was a question asked about high-end models, and the response was, with Radeon 2 and Radeon 3 we started making $1,000 graphics cards. When you want to offer a full stock, you would need 3 or 4 chips, which requires significant resources, people, money, and time. Most users want everything the competition offers above 1,000, but that's not our focus. So obviously they're not going to be focusing on above $1,000 cards, which makes sense. They already stated that. So about FSR 4, we have some interesting information. By using machine learning, we can achieve better quality, but this requires substantial computational power. That's why only Radeon 4 graphics cards can handle FSR 4 technologies. For now, we have FSR 4 only for Radeon 4. But there's an interesting information. It is possible we can optimize it to make it work in Radeon 3 architecture. We're on it and we want to do it, but we need to work on it. So I guess they will bring FSR 4 to Radeon 3 later down the line. But for now, they're going to be focusing on Radeon 4 right now. So that is some valuable information. And next up, we have something interesting. 9070 XT. Look at that. The pricing rumor is here. AMD reference card will be priced at $479, and the AIB cards will reach up to $549, similar to, of course, the 7800 XT or somewhere around there. Or if you look into the current pricing of the 7800 XT, that would make more sense, right? So we're looking at 9070 XT. The top of the line from AMD this generation is only $549 max, which is quite interesting, isn't it? It's similar to exactly 5070. So that's quite interesting. Will it compete with 5070 or better? That is a good question, but we'll come to that later. But first, let's look into some images from Gigabyte. Well, technically a user reported here, and this is a Gigabyte card. As you can see, it says Gigabyte right over here, and that's the Radeon RX 9070 XT you're looking at. So yeah, the card doesn't look that beefy at all, because obviously it doesn't really need that much power, because if you look right over here, it uses only 2 pins. To 8 pins, I should say. So yeah, they're not utilizing the 12 VHPWR connector, only the generic 8 pins, but 2 of them, so it should be efficient enough. And one more information here, that in Triple Forum it was removed, but yeah, 9070 will be releasing on 22nd of this January. So that is interesting. And lastly, we have some big information. I mean, real big information. We have something interesting here. Before that, let's look into this particular highlight, which says the original poster also said that because it is a beta driver, so the current score is low. Even then, when you look into the score, it says right over here, the GPU score is 14,558. So yeah, that is quite interesting. in times by extreme, we're looking at this particular score, and as you can see right over here, it says Navi something, right? Navi 4. I can see a 4. If you zoom into it, it says there's a 4. So definitely it's a, well, we can tell it's a Navi 48 GPU. But there's one interesting part here is that it says AMD Radeon RX 7800 XT. So that's kind of conflicting, right? It doesn't make sense. I guess Tech Power of GPU-Z doesn't really have the information about the Navi 48 GPUs, but it does say Navi 48, so that's quite interesting, or at least Navi 4, but also RX 7800 XT, so it's recognizing as the RX 7800 XT. Also, some other information is there. I guess that's not really quite accurate. And a reply here is right over here, as you can see. Due to driver issues, this is not even normal performance. So when you look into the performance here, this is a speedway test when you're looking at here, and it gets 63.46 FPS, basically scoring 6,345 in speedway. And they're also saying that these are driver issues, so they're not going to be performing as well. So with better drivers, it may perform better. We'll see. But we have some comparisons in video cards here, and that's quite interesting information here. Let's look into the speedway test. It's kind of conflicting. I'll show you why. Because if you look closely here, alleged Radeon RX 9070 XT, because it's kind of alleged because it's showing the RX 7800 XT for some reason. Even then, RX 7800 XT doesn't perform like the 7900 XTX, so we can kind of say it is going to be 9070 XT, kinda. But let's look into the performance here. As I said, 9070 XT is like performing like the 7900 XTX. So yeah, in speedway, it is matching 7900 XTX and also matching 4070 Ti, but slower than 4080. Obviously, 4090 is top of the chart here, but it's kind of underwhelming that 4090 is so up in the sky and RX 9070 XT can't even match that, where 5070 can, with, of course, upscalers, but without upscalers, at least 5070 is performing like a 4080 Ti. So if that is the case, 9070 XT should also perform like a 4080 at least, right? But then when you look into the 3D Mark Time Spy, it's conflicting, very much conflicting. Look at that. RX 9070 XT is performing better than 4080 Super. Again, better than 4080, 4080 Super, almost similar to 7900 XTX, but slower definitely, and not even close to RTX 4090, so that is quite expected. But that's quite interesting here, that in Speedway, it is slower than 4080s, and in Time Spy, it's better than 4080 Super. Recently, there was a gaming benchmark where allegedly 9070, again, 9070 was performing 99 FPS on average. When you compare that with Call of Duty Black Ops 6 4K data, of course, because this test was conducted in 4K, you can see that RTX 4090 is reaching 102 FPS and 7900 XTX is reaching 89 FPS. So it's like RTX 9070 non-XT is reaching and performing on par with RTX 4090, right? Of course, in this particular game. But it is reaching up to that. But then again, in these results, right, it doesn't really, defeat 4080. And in this case, it defeats 4080 Super. So there are conflicting results roaming around. So it is quite interesting. Is it really the RTX or RX 9070 XT? This is very confusing, but we'll see, because January 22nd will be the launch of RX 9070 or 9070 XT. So all the things will be clear. But for now, it is very conflicting and cannot be told how will the RX 9070 XT or even 9070 will perform. So yeah, what do you think? How will the RX 9070 XT or non-XT will perform? What is your prediction? Comment down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you there in the next video.